We have talked about why privacy has become such a critical aspect for every organization, how it is now easily the currency of trust for an organization with their customers, with their employees, even with their vendors. Let us now talk about how we could actually go about building a privacy program. How do we make it robust? How do we get it off the ground? What are the key components of this privacy program? Who are our key partners? How can we make sure that with minimal to sufficient effort, we are able to actually put together something that can stand the test of time and deliver the results that we're looking to gain within a period of 3 to 6 months, if not the first year at least. Whose responsibility is privacy within an organization? The short answer is everyone's, but that's not an answer that you can easily implement. To begin with, privacy as a function becomes a responsibility of either the compliance team or the legal team. Depending on the size of the organization, it's either the same team or there are separate organizations that run with these functions. That said, legal is always involved in terms of making the right interpretation with respect to what compliance looks like. Your cybersecurity teams are also critical partners that need to work in tandem with the privacy office to make sure that all the assessments, the audits that they're running can be leveraged. You could piggyback on some of those to be able to include some privacy questions as well. Another team that's critical is the internal audit team. Most organizations have an internal audit function. They also have an external audit, but the internal audit teams are already aware of the compliance aspects. They have tools that you could probably leverage. They also have the relationships with the business so they can get the message across. They too can be used to include some of the messaging and the assessment aspects when running internal audits. Procurement is another key partner because procurement is involved in all vendor relationships. They also have the relationships within business. Then we come down to marketing. Marketing is the one that's out there working with customers, working with clients. They are aware of their marketing efforts, which is also the focus on a lot of customer data collection. You also have your human resources department. All employee information sits in their systems, their processes, hence they are critical partners who also need to be part of the privacy program. The two other aspects remaining are your actual business, the revenue generation, all the functions within the organization that is focused towards generating revenue and fulfilling and turning that effort or product into revenue back into the organization. So the business teams are essential and need to be part of this process as well. Last but absolutely not least would be your technology teams. Now, within your technology teams, most organizations now have an enterprise architecture function. That is a very critical group because they run what is called architecture review boards. These ARB are essential in highlighting and identifying early warnings for privacy risk. Then the technology teams themselves, because they are the ones that own the data. They own the systems, they own the data flows, they own all the interfaces and integrations that are happening between other systems applications and especially with vendors. These teams together form the core of your privacy program. But yes, in the end, it boils down to the whole organization, but it might be key individuals in each of these departments. And the crux would be to actually define privacy working group or a privacy champions network. Call it what you may. These are individuals who are representatives within each specific department of the organization and are your champions for privacy. They are the ones who will be able to understand the impact of maintaining privacy compliance, become early warners for privacy risk, and also give a heads up to the teams on how to build privacy by design, privacy by default into their day-to-day operations. What are the key components of your privacy program? When do we say we have a privacy program that is robust and scalable? To begin with, you need to understand the privacy laws that your company needs to adhere to. That is at the front and center of the privacy program. Laws keep changing, regulations keep getting added, business keeps growing, so you're getting into new regions. Hence, identification of the privacy laws that are within scope for your privacy program is the first thing that you need to do. Next, look at your customer interactions. How does data come into the organization? Every interaction with the customer is either online, through a mobile app or a web app or a desktop app, or it's on the phone or it's within stores. At every interaction with the customer, transparency starts with letting them know in the form of a privacy notice what data of theirs is being collected. Why is it being collected? Where is it being stored? For how long is it being stored? With whom it is being shared? Why is it being shared? All that information is the basis of transparency, and that's in the form of a privacy notice. Once the data is collected, or even As the data is being collected, part of the collection process is consent. Are you collecting their consent before getting their data in and processing? That could be in the form of a universal consent management platform, or it could be simply as a cookie consent platform. Either way, this needs to be done because every business typically has a website. And when you have a website, you're interested in making that experience on the customer so easy, so simple that you bring in targeted advertising, you're bringing in personalization, you have analytics running to make sure the site is up and running, there are no delays. All these things result in tags and cookies being dropped on the browser. These need to be controlled and governed within a cookie consent management platform. That said, once the data comes in, where is it being stored? Who is it being shared with? How long is it being stored? All this information is critical, and that's where your data mapping exercise comes in. You need to have an inventory of all your systems, your processes, your vendors with whom you're sharing the information. Under GDPR, you're required to have a records of processing activities, which covers a lot of this information with respect to your processes. Who are you sharing with? Why are you collecting the information? Do you have legitimate interest bases? What are the legal reasons why you're collecting this information? As you're retaining this information, the next question is, how long are you retaining this information? Do you have a retention schedule that is current? Once you have a current retention schedule, you then have to start auditing all your systems to ensure that they are adhering and following that retention schedule. Hence, retention enforcement is another critical aspect of your privacy program. When we move into data flows, you're sharing information with your vendors. That takes us into the world of third-party risk management. Third-party risk management ensures that you're assessing your vendors for security and privacy risks, and you're protecting yourself with the necessary contractual clauses in the form of a data processing addendum or anything else in your services agreement or your vendor contracts. When it comes to processing data within the organization, we need to ensure that we have the privacy by design and default principles being incorporated. As far as they're concerned, the Privacy Office should release to their guidelines. These business guidelines will tell them what are the key aspects to keep in mind. It'll explain notice, it'll explain consent. Whenever you're collecting information, ensure that the privacy notice is available and accessible to the customer. Whenever you're asking them to subscribe to something or you're asking to convey order notices or information or notifications, ask for their consent. All these aspects will become a detailed business guidelines document that tells them how they need to be functioning in order for them to be compliant by design and by default. When they're building a product, when they're creating a new interaction with the customer, these guidelines will ensure that they are following the privacy practices that are going to make them compliant from day one, as opposed to coming back and retrofitting privacy practices into their processes or their systems. From that, it goes to the next obvious step of training and awareness. You need to have a program that is tailored to your business, your industry, and to the specific teams. HR needs to know about something specific. Marketing needs to know about something else. Procurement has a different approach. When you're dealing with your technology teams, they need other information. A training and awareness program to begin with could be generic to say, here are the laws that we need to comply with. Here are the key components of compliance. But then you can get into more and more specific training that will cater to that particular department's specific needs. Going back to privacy laws, most laws require organizations to fulfill what is called data subject requests. This data subject request fulfillment process is also a very critical aspect of a privacy office. This is where, depending on the law, depending on the region, customers, employees, applicants, contractors, vendors can put in data subject requests to either access their information, delete their information, opt out of targeted advertising, automated decision-making, processing of sensitive PI. This function of data subject rights fulfillment is a critical aspect of a privacy program. This also needs to be baked in with respect to building a robust program. Another critical aspect of a privacy program is incident management. Incidents could lead to breaches, and that's why they say every breach is an incident, but every incident is not a breach. Nevertheless, the Privacy Office needs to be aware of every incident that has involved personal information for their customers, employees, or vendors. This incident management process requires you to have an incident response plan, a framework that allows you to be able to respond to these incidents, a set of individuals who are key and front and center in responding to these incidents. Notification is involved. Some of the laws require you to notify them within a certain time period. Certain processes have to be followed. Certain provisions need to be provided to customers once a breach has happened or an incident has been reported and the customers have been affected. This requires you to have a process in place before the incident occurs so that when it does occur, you're able to meet those timeline requirements from these regulations.